If you're offering 30-day payment terms, you're not really running your business in the way you probably intended.
You're quietly operating as an unpaid lender. No fees, no interest, no legal protection, just risk. And you're doing it to keep clients happy. People pleasing your way into debt.
And that's the thing. Banks are lending money with terms that compensate them for risk and delay, and they do it with full control, legal protection, and profit in mind.
And that's where this conversation really begins, because most people don't realise the first place their boundaries collapse is financially. Not because they don't care, but because they're stuck in old stories, bad habits, or just trying to keep the peace. So it's worth asking, where did this way of working really come from?
If you've fallen into this trap, and let's be honest, most businesses have, you become a quiet victim of a system that actually was never designed with your particular needs in mind.
Yeah, that's right. Payment terms like net 30 were created because everything used to be really slow. Goods had to be shipped, and really shipped, sent by a ship. Invoices were written by hand. Banking meant posting letters, sticking those stamps on and stick them in a post box.
Yeah, and I suppose it made sense back then.
And over time, that became standard, especially in manufacturing.
But unless you're running a coal operation in 1879, that logic doesn't really serve you anymore. So why are we still doing it?
Probably because that's the way it's always been done. But sticking with that logic can quietly drain your momentum day after day. Doing something just because it's convention, that's rarely a good enough reason. You deserve a business that works for you, not one that forces you to follow someone else's outdated rules.
Yeah, we actually covered this in more depth in our video, Build Your Business with Other People's Money, remember?
Yeah.
In it, we break down exactly how to leverage outside resources to grow without draining your own. You'll find the link below, and it's worth a watch.
Yeah, that's right. Instead of funding every job from your own pocket, you use the client's payment to fund the work. They commit with cash. You deliver with clarity. That's a grown-up, sustainable exchange.
Yeah, a perfect example of that actually is one of our clients, Jess.
Mm-hmm.
She used to wait until jobs were complete before invoicing, and she thought it made her look kind of more likable, more professional, but actually it left her stressed, unpaid, and doubting whether she could actually make the business work.
If I remember, we helped her reframe that. She started asking for 50% up front, and the change to her and her business was clear almost straight away. She began walking into client meetings knowing she deserved to be there. That's what upfront payment does. It tells your nervous system, I'm not begging, I'm building.
Yeah. So she actually carried herself with a lot more confidence and started to protect those business boundaries.
When you ask for payment up front, you reinforce that your time, energy and value matter. And every time you do that, you strengthen your sense of worth.
So now you know where the 30-day idea came from and why it doesn't belong in your business anymore.
Exactly. You're lending money you don't have to people who aren't even asking for it. Let's show you exactly how that plays out.
I have a question mark. A question mark in that. I've got a question. This pattern where we avoid asking, where we default to the easy option of using the 30-day payment terms, what's actually going on there? Because it feels deeper than just a bad business habit.
That's right, it usually is. And trauma psychology is a name for it. They call it fawning. Over-accommodating to feel safe. It's a much deeper kind of people-pleasing that starts early. If you grew up being praised for being agreeable or helpful or avoiding conflict, you may have learned that your value comes from keeping others happy. But in business, it shows up as undercharging for your work or being over-accommodating and avoiding difficult conversations. If left unchallenged, the habit can stick. If you've ever felt guilty asking for money, check if there's a deeper pattern. Asking for fair payment isn't just a business decision, it's a quiet way to reclaim your personal agency.
It's really interesting. So by changing and asking for payment, that one small consistent action helps unlearn the pattern. You're retraining your brain to make decisions based on integrity, not fear or avoiding being seen.
Exactly. It's okay to be seen. It's okay to actually expect fair exchange.
Right, yeah. And Mark, you mentioned this idea of reclaiming agency. Where does that idea come from in the psychology world?
Yeah, that's a great question. Martin Seligman comes to mind. He's the founding figure of positive psychology, and his work on learned helplessness shows how people can fall into patterns of passivity when they feel they've lost control. Reclaiming agency, like asking for fair payment, is how you reverse that. You deserve mutual respect and clear boundaries.
All right. Let's bring this to life a bit, because it's easy to nod along and say, yes, I should ask for payment up front, but it's another thing entirely to actually do it.
Okay, picture this. You land a big new project. You're excited. You buy materials, line up contractors, maybe pay for some design work. All of it comes out of your pocket, or worse, from borrowing money that's already costing you interest.
Yeah.
And the kicker, using the convention of 30-day payment terms, you spend all that before the client's paid you a single penny.
Yeah, that is so true. And then it comes to the waiting game. You finish the work, you send the invoice, and you hope it gets paid on time. Meanwhile, you're carrying all the risk. You've done the job, you've spent the money, and now you're stuck. You're chasing that payment, sometimes for weeks, sometimes even longer.
And here's where it really starts to pinch. While you're still waiting to get paid for that last project, the next one kicks off. More materials, more costs, more money, all going out the door, all before the previous client has settled up.
Yeah, and that's exactly how good businesses end up in trouble. Not because they aren't delivering, but because the cash dries up faster than it comes in. It's called overtrading. It looks like growth, feels like success, but without upfront payments, it's a cash flow disaster waiting to happen. So what we're saying here, it's not just about invoicing, it's a radical rethink of how you run your business, where your needs are front and center, ensuring that you get paid on time and ideally upfront. And we get it. It's easy for us to sit here and say, ask for payment up front. But if you're early in business, or if this feels like a big leap, it can feel like too much. Like you're suddenly playing a role you haven't quite grown into as yet.
But I can see that people at home are going to be thinking, how do I actually do that? So how do you ask for payment up front? Here's how a possible pitch might go.
Okay, so let's do an example pitch. Thanks for meeting with us today. Before we dive into your brief, there's one thing we like to be upfront about because it sets the tone and it protects both sides. We ask for 50% payment upfront, and that's intentional. Our values are clarity, integrity, and respect, and that includes how we work financially. Upfront payment lets us focus fully on the work. No distractions, no chasing invoices. It keeps things really clean and committed. And it also means we don't overstretch. We're careful with our capacity so every project gets the attention it deserves. No burnout, just solid delivery from a team that's all in. So while some agencies might promise you everything and figure it out later, we don't. We run a values-led, sustainable business. And if you're still with us after that, then you're probably our kind of client.
So that's an example of how you can incorporate it in your presentation to clients. Not a script to copy word for word, mind, but a shape to follow.
Yeah.
It's confident, it's calm, and it leads with values. We've attached a link to this for you so you can play around with it. We shared it to show you that asking for payment upfront isn't about being aggressive. It's not about being difficult. Don't see yourself like that. It's about clarity and confidence. It sets expectations from the beginning so everyone knows what we're walking into.
Yeah. And it also filters your clients. If someone hears that and flinches, well, they might not be the right fit. But if they respect it, they're usually easier to work with longer term.
And honestly, if they're going to flinch, you want them to do that right there in the room, not after you've left the meeting, not in a vague follow-up email, because that moment gives you a chance to talk it through. That's what sales professionals call handling objection. People that like Dan Locke and Mirren Golden teach this. Great closers don't avoid the objections. They invite them, because the real goal isn't avoiding any conflict or question. It's to get it all out there so you can deal with it there and then.
Yeah. Now, so far, we've focused on the system, on how old business models like 30-day terms just don't make sense anymore. But also, we've got to turn the spotlight inward, because the truth is, this isn't just about money. It's about your mindset, isn't it, Mark? And this is where I want to bring particularly your background into psychology into play, Mark. I know this isn't just about numbers on an invoice. This is deeper, right? This is about self-worth.
It is. It's often rooted in early roles we were taught to play. If you were praised for being agreeable, helpful, or quiet, especially if you learn to keep the peace, you might have internalized the idea that your value depends on keeping other people comfortable.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen again and again. Clients who are talented, creative, experienced, but when it comes to asking for fair payment, they hesitate, not because their work isn't valuable, but because deep down, they're not sure that they are.
Yeah, that's where learned helplessness comes in, where people stop asserting themselves because at some point they learned it wouldn't change anything. It's not logical, it's emotional, but it holds people back.
And let's be clear, this kind of people-pleasing gets expensive, not just in lost income, but in energy.
Yeah.
You give and you give and you give, and eventually there's just nothing left.
Some psychologists call it self-erasure, sacrificing your own needs just to keep things smooth. And it's surprisingly common, especially in business owners. Does it feel hard to ask for payment up front or even on time? If it does, don't panic. It's just a pattern of thinking.
Right.
And like any pattern, it can be rewritten. Start with one clear boundary, like changing your payment term, asking for 50% up front. You practice, you keep showing up, and eventually a new path feels natural.
Yeah, and when it does, your business starts to reflect it. You attract clients who respect boundaries, who pay without needing reminders. And there's something else that needs saying here. We've seen people in business who, honestly, they're not the most talented or experienced, but they're confident in one thing, asking to be paid.
Yeah, what I would say is they know their value. They expect others to recognize it. And because of that, they often outperform more skilled competitors. People delivering brilliant work, but struggling to ask clearly or confidently.
And if you struggle with that, it's not a flaw, it's a pattern, and patterns can be changed. All right, so let's get practical. What does this actually look like in a real business?
Take Anna, for example. She runs a branding studio. She delivers brilliant work. She got a lovely presence. But for years, she'd finish projects before asking for a penny. Then came the stress, chasing invoices, feeling disrespected, and wondering why she never felt secure.
Yeah, she'd say things like, I don't want to come across too aggressive, or what if they don't hire me if I ask up front? And that's the script of someone wanting to be liked instead of respected.
So she did something simple but powerful. She chose 3 core values: clarity, sustainability, and respect. And from those, she built her boundaries.
She wrote a one-page policy, and it said, to honour our work and yours, we ask for 50% payment up front. This allows us to book you into our schedule, secure the right resources, and focus 100% on your project.
And guess what? Most clients said yes. The ones who didn't, they weren't the right fit, and they filtered themselves out very early on.
And that's the thing, your boundaries don't scare the right clients away, do they? They attract them.
Setting values is about more than writing nice words on your website. It's about turning those words into action, rules that you live by and work by.
So if you're not sure where to start, ask yourself this: what do I want my business to feel like day to day? Calm, creative, fair? Start today by choosing 3 words. That's your values foundation. And then build your policies around those. Payment terms, communication style, project timelines, everything flows from values. Because when your values drive your boundaries, you stop bending to pressure and you start building a business that works for you. And once you start doing this, asking clearly, setting boundaries, it's not just your income that changes, something shifts inside you.
Yeah, and that shift is you beginning to believe yourself. Not just believe in yourself, but actually believe your own words when you say, this is what I charge, or this is how I work. That's what builds confidence. And that confidence creates a ripple effect. It draws in better clients, smoother projects, stronger positioning. Let's talk about how that works, because it's more than just feeling good, it's a loop.
Let's talk about what happens when you do this, when you actually stick to these principles, because the shift is more than just financial.
It builds self-belief. When you ask for fair payment and receive it, you reinforce that you're worthy, that your work has value, that you don't need to beg or chase to be taken seriously.
Yeah, and that confidence shows up in your posture, your proposals, your pricing. People feel it even if they don't consciously clock it. We talked about this in Amy Cuddy's TED Talk on Your Body Language Shapes Who You Are in our video on neuroscience and failure to fuel, and the link for that is below.
You've probably seen someone like that, someone who exudes grounded confidence. They're not loud or pushy, they just have a certain quiet about them. They ask clearly, they state their turn, and clients lean in, not because they're intimidated, but because they trust them.
Take someone confident like Sarah Davies. She started Crafter's Companion from a uni bedroom and built it into a 25 million business. Now she's on Dragon's Den. But what stands out isn't just her success, it's her calm, clear presence. She doesn't overtalk, she doesn't oversell. She simply knows the value of what she offers, and she makes sure that others do too.
And that's the key. When you ask for payment up front, it's not about pressure, it's about clarity. It says, I know my worth, I respect your time, and I expect the same in return. That kind of grounded ask builds trust, and over time, it builds your reputation.
Psychologist Dr. Kristen Neff talks about this as self-compassion, not just being kind to yourself, but treating yourself like someone whose needs and limits matter. And that includes financially.
Yeah, and so it keeps compounding. Confidence, boundaries, better clients, more confidence. That's the loop. And that's where things get interesting, because no matter how clear your values are, that first boundary often brings some pushback, not just from others, but from inside your own head.
All right, let's be honest. The moment you set a boundary, like asking for payment up front, there's usually a wobble, isn't there? Sometimes from clients, but often from you.
And that's normal. But when you hold your ground once, it becomes easier the next time, because now you have proof. It didn't fall apart. You didn't get rejected. In fact, it probably strengthened the relationship.
I've had this happen with clients too. I remember sitting across from someone during a quote meeting. Big opportunity, high stakes, and they hit me with, we don't pay up front. we do 90-day terms. And in that moment, I felt it, that urge to shrink, to make an exception, to bend our boundaries just to win the deal. But then I remembered we set those boundaries for a reason. We set the terms for a reason. Just like we respect our clients' boundaries, we expect the same in return. So even with a dry mouth and a racing heart, I held the line. We require payment up front. And you know what? He didn't even blink, said yes without hesitation. And just like that, my confidence clicked back into place.
And that's the gift of testing your principles. You don't just discover your backbone, you discover the kind of clients you actually want to work with.
Yeah. And here's the kicker. When you start running your business emotionally, you make exceptions. You break your own rules, not because it makes strategic sense, but because you're afraid. So now that we've said all this, what do you actually do with it?
You take 20 minutes, you sit down, you write 3 values, just like our client did, Anna. 3 core values that shape every boundary she set. What you want your business to stand for, first of all. No buzzwords, not what you think you should say. What actually matters to you.
Yeah. And then you ask, what boundaries protect those underlying values? If your value is clarity, maybe it means every client signs off on a clear scope of work before you start. And that's just a simple doc that lays out what you're doing, when, and what's included. If the value is respect, maybe that looks like 100% payment up front. And if your value is sustainability, maybe it's taking on fewer projects, but making sure that they're better paid. Yeah, ask for more money for your work.
Yeah, this is not fluff. This is the actual foundation where your values and boundaries are aligned. Your business feels more authentic. Clients know what to expect. You know how to show up.
Yeah. And when things get tested, which they will, you come back to that list. You say, no, this is how we work here. It's not about being inflexible. It's about being principled. That's where real confidence grows. Not in the bluster, but in the quiet resolve to lead well.
And when you draw that line, when you say, this is how we work, you're not just protecting your business, you're developing and growing yourself, because business isn't just income, it's the fastest way to level up who you are.